Hello, my name is Tony Dong, COEUR D'ALENE, Idaho. AP Robert Martin's platoon was sent to check out an enemy bunker complex that had been hit with heavy airstrikes. He heard a coughing sound. In this one bunker I found 3 dead Vietnamese, 2 men, and 1 woman, the COEUR D'ALENE man said softly. I turned to go to the next bunker when I heard a cough from under the dead bodies. Under the woman's body was a naked infant girl, perhaps 2 months old, who was shivering and had shrapnel in one of her thighs. Martin wrapped the girl in an empty sandbag and carried her to the pickup zone. After Martin informed his commanders via radio of the situation, his chopper was diverted to the Quang Tri Catholic Hospital, where the baby could be treated. Upon arrival, the nuns had me fill out an identification card asking for a name, Martin said. Martin didn't have identification for the girl, but those in his platoon had a suggestion. They said, "Sarge, why don't you name her after you?" Martin said. I said, "What do you mean?" "Name her Bob." They said, "Roberta after Robert." And, since she was found on a Sunday, that became her last name. Martin's lone contact with Roberta Sunday was that one day in August 1970. While he's thought about her a lot over the past 47 years, he recently decided he'd like to reconnect with her. "It would be closure for me," said Martin, commander of VFW, Post 889, in COEUR D'ALENE. "I went to Vietnam 4 times and wasn't happy with the way the war ended. Maybe I wouldn't be so angry about the war. In the past month or 2 she's really been on my mind for some reason, and I can't seem to shake it." Martin was injured 3 times during the war: in May 1966 from shrapnel caused by a grenade, again the following May from shrapnel, and finally in November 1970 when he suffered 3rd-degree burns from a fire on a trail. "I call the first 2 my cheap Purple Hearts," Martin joked. He said finding Roberta Sunday would bring something positive to his war experience. When Beverly Hansen, VFW Auxiliary President, heard Martin, 70, share his rescue story, she immediately started to research for him to find the woman. Her research already has her on a trail. When she searched online for Roberta Sunday in Vietnam, not a common name affiliated with Vietnam, she found an article about how a blind Asian woman, who looked to be in her 40s, was hired at a medical company in New Zealand. Roberta would be 47 today. Thinking that Vietnam and New Zealand war ties would be a far stretch, Hansen dismissed the information and moved on with her search. However, she later discovered that New Zealand sent nurses to Vietnam from 1968 to 1974 as part of the Save the Children program to bring Vietnamese orphans to that country. Hansen is now trying to find the article again, and has reached out to multiple contacts in both Vietnam and New Zealand, including a former nurse, a former member of the New Zealand Parliament, and assistance agencies. She is waiting to hear back from them. Quang Tri has been in communist hands since 1975, she said. Records are very scarce. Martin is hopeful the leads will help him reach Roberta Sunday. "It's possible," he said, "that she may have been blinded by the blast in the bunker. And there's the obvious reason for optimism. How many Asians could there be with the name of Roberta Sunday in New Zealand?" Martin asked. Has seen other veterans become reconnected with people from wartime encounters, which also gives him hope. His friend from the Army's 101st Airborne Division, Richard Luttrell, was connected with the daughter of a Vietnamese soldier Luttrell had shot. Luttrell wanted to return a photo of the girl and her father to her. The story was featured on a TV show. His friend from the Army's 101st Airborne Division, Richard Luttrell, was connected with the daughter of a Vietnamese soldier Luttrell had shot. Luttrell wanted to return a photo of the girl and her father to her. The story was featured on a TV show. A man who had been friends with the girl's father saw an article about it in the Hanoi newspaper, which at the time was being used to wrap fish in a marketplace. Martin said, Luttrell went to Vietnam to return the photo to the woman. It turned out that the photo was the only one she had of her father, he said. Luttrell and the woman became friends and wrote to each other often until his death in 2010, Martin said. Martin said, "I'd love to go meet Roberta Sunday, wherever she may be. If she went to New Zealand, she probably speaks English," he said with a smile. Asked what he'd say to her, Martin briefly paused before answering, "So, how is life treating you?" "You and I go back a long way," Martin said after 3 injuries and nationwide negativity toward the Vietnam War. Finding Robert a Sunday would finally give him something positive to grasp from the wounds of war. Of all the things that happened to me in Vietnam, the one good thing was being able to give that girl a chance to live a full life, he said. It would be something else if I found her. It would bring final closure to me of the war. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here.
Hello, my name is Tony Dong. Gov. J. Inslee signed $43.7 billion budget. The legislative building is shown Friday, June 30, 2017, at the Capitol in Olympia, Wash. Details of a new two-year state operating budget were released Friday, the same day Washington lawmakers must vote on the plan in order to prevent a partial government shutdown. AP photo Ted S. Warren, The Associated Press, Olympia, Wash. AP with less than an hour to spare, Gov. J. Inslee signed a new two-year $43.7 billion state operating budget Friday in time to avoid a partial government shutdown. His signature came after rapid voting in the legislature the same day details of the budget were publicly released. The Senate approved the measure on a 39-10 vote, followed by the House's 70-23 vote. The budget spends $1.8 billion on K-12 public schools over the next 2 years. That investment is part of a $7.3 billion hike over 4 years designed to satisfy a state Supreme Court ruling that the state had not adequately funded basic education. The budget also adds $618 million for public employee collective bargaining and pay, and $102 million in mental health spending. Inslee signed the bill surrounded by a large bipartisan group of lawmakers from the House and Senate. I believe this budget at long last will meet our constitutional obligations to fully and fairly fund basic education, he said. The plan is paid for with a mix of revenue. The statewide property tax per 1,000 of assessed value increases from 1.89 to 2.70, with the increase being earmarked for education. That rate expected to bring in $6.6 billion over the next 4 years has $1.6 billion of that coming in the next 2 years. The plan also keeps in place local property tax levies, but caps them beginning in 2019 at a lower level, and requires they be used for programs that supplement basic education. Senate and House nonpartisan analyses show different impacts of the property tax increase after the offset of the lowering of local levies, with the Senate analysis showing most districts would see a decrease by 2021, and the House analysis showing that most would see an increase. Constitutionally, the property tax is what funds our public education system, said Republican Senator John Braun, one of the key budget negotiators. We worked very hard to make sure it's balanced so that there's not a huge weight on one part of the state. House Democratic budget negotiators said that while the increase in some districts, including Seattle, is causing some of their caucus angst, it was the best solution they could agree to. We all know that in the end we have to pay for schools somehow, said Democratic Representative June Robinson. This is what we can agree on in a divided government. Legislative leaders say the budget complies with a 2012 state Supreme Court ruling that they must meet the state's constitutional requirement to fully fund the state's basic education system. Lawmakers have already put more than $2 billion toward the issue since the ruling, but the biggest piece remaining of the court order is figuring out how much the state must provide for teacher salaries. School districts currently pay a big chunk of those salaries with local property tax levies. The court has said that the state has until September 1, 2018, to do that, but that the details including funding must be in place before the legislature adjourns this year. Lawmakers who started their regular 105-day legislative session in January have had to go into 3 overtime sessions to reach agreement. Republican Representative David Taylor said during debate in the House that while he loved the policy, he had to vote no on the education funding plan because of the property tax impacts on his school districts. However, he called the plan a clear message to the court that we've been serious the whole time. An additional $456 million over the next 2 years comes from adding sales tax to bottled water, removing the tax break for fuel extraction used by oil refineries, and requires online retailers based out of state to collect and remit sales tax from Washington state customers. The overall plan also would lower the business and occupation rate on state manufacturers from 0.484% to 0.2904%, the same preferential rate given to Boeing and others in the aerospace sector. The outline of the education plan provided Thursday sets a minimum starting salary for teachers at $40,000, with adjustment for inflation and regional differences. Under the plan, the average minimum salary for instructional staff will be $64,000, and adding in regionalization, it will range from $66,194 to $82,081. School districts can pay a salary over the maximum of $90,000 by up to 10% for educational staff associates or teachers who teach science, technology, engineering, math, or in bilingual or special education programs. Even though the operating budget is done, lawmakers still need to address the capital budget that deals with projects across the state. That budget has been held up by a dispute over a legislative fix to a water ruling. Legislative leaders acknowledged they may need additional time this month to finish work on that. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here.